better to do.
Today we have the ever illustrious Mike Hartsfield of Free Will, Outspoken, Suppression Swing, Amendment 18, Done Dying, and Dear Furious. I'm sure I'm missing some projects. Weren't you in Drift Again? Did you play bass in Drift Again? I feel like that 7-inch you played bass on it.
Yeah.
And you played bass on My Fire Burns On, I think, too, or?
I played guitar on My Fire Burns On, and then
okay.
Through Drift Again, I was playing bass or guitar, and it was kind of like whichever members didn't show up, I would do the others. So
yeah.
It was a sort of unreliable lineup for quite a while.
Yeah. Well, and just as importantly to us and most of the people listening, he runs New Age Records, which along with his bandmates label Conversion and to an extent Doghouse, managed to shape straight edge hardcore for the early to mid 90s aesthetically, as well as in my opinion, politically. And yeah, nice to have you, Mike.
Oh, it's very nice to be here.
You want to start us off, Rich? You have a question?
Yeah, well, so with New Age, I was thinking, you know, it kind of defined, like I said, it defined early 90s, like specifically kind of the straight edge hardcore scene. And when you were doing it, did it feel like you were doing something a little bit different than say like Rev was doing before you, or did you feel like you were kind of doing something that would, you know, now it's just kind of the New Age catalog from that era is like kind of defines 90s hardcore. Do you feel like you knew that was what was happening at the time, or?
No. I mean, I was really just wanting to put out bands that I liked. Mm-hmm. I mean, really, it was just this is what I'm into. This is what I want to promote. And there were times when I got a couple offers to have like releases just kind of handed to me, like recordings done, layouts done, you know, from kind of like bigger labels. Mm-hmm. As they put it, they were trying to build street credibility for these bands that were doing bigger releases on their labels. And it was just kind of like you know, like get a check, you know, sign a contract, and this thing would be out on the label. But I kind of had too much pride in the label to just, you know, fill in, you know, a release schedule for the year with just whatever may or may not be good or whether I liked it or not. So it was really just a reflection of my friends, these relationships, bands that I liked, bands I believed in, and people I believed in. So I didn't really have to go too far. Most mm-hmm. of the bands were, you know, multiple releases or friends of that band that got vouched for. And, you know, like one thing I've always done is listen to, you know, how the bands on the label talk about other up and coming bands, like, oh, these are mm-hmm. great guys, these are not great guys, whatever it might be. And the people I listen to, I trust, and I don't think have, you know, real, you know, opinions not based on their true feelings. So
sure.
That's the definition of most of, I mean, and up until this day, it's just still bands I listen to, mm-hmm. you know, and bands that I like. And it's unfortunately for me financially that it's never been what's hot. I think it's about to get hot. It's just, it's a straight edge band that I really like, that I think they're, you know, in the same direction of bands we've dealt with, or, you know, kind of coming out of that same area. So it's really mm-hmm. why, you know, we've really just stayed in the same sort of pocket over time. And like right now we're busier than we were in certain parts of the 90s just right now.
Yeah.
With the current roster, I'm so incredibly busy.
Yeah, you've definitely had a glow up of recent, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of that, at some point you had, I mean, it was a little bit of a lull in the label, and from your heyday, and it's like you've swung back and really rebuilt the momentum. And what was the precipitating factor that made you just be like, you know what, I really want to jump back into this and push the label, and what was it that you did to get to that point?
Well, to do a brief history, when the label pretty much folded in 97, 98, I want to say. There were some business dealings and some checks that didn't clear from distributors that really put me in a bind, to put it nicely. And it was people that I had shipped product to that had sold it and not paid me, but were asking for more product, but wanting to pay for that product once the next shipment got there. And so like I really got put behind the 8 ball in a way to where like I couldn't move because I couldn't pay for anything else. These distributors weren't paying me. And so I moved out of, it's funny, I went from living in the warehouse that was New Age to I rented 2 bedrooms and a bathroom and moved the label and myself into there. And literally there were boxes outside on the patio. Like there was just so much stuff that was condensing down to how do I stay alive? And so that was at the time when Trial was on the label, and I told them I'm not going to be able to put out the LP. They went to Equal Vision. We had Redemption 87 in the pocket, and that went to Blackout, I think. And so we had, things that were in process, and bands were wanting to know, like, hey, how come our record isn't on the shelves anymore? Bands that had built the label, the Mouthpieces, the Unbrokens, and those bands that I was just like, I'm fucking exhausted. Like I am, barely eating, barely surviving. I can't press anything. The distributors, if I could get them anything, owe me so much money. Like I wouldn't even be able to pay for the freight to get it to them. So I just really, really was wiped out. Like I was just really thinking like, boy, wouldn't a 9-to-5 be great now? Just like, oh, at the end of the day, you just go home and like have hobbies or read books or just hang out with family or something. So that was the end of the 90s. And then getting into the 2000s, I kind of got the bug and did a few things. And, and it just kind of crept around and it didn't really come back as quick as I wanted. Some of the releases weren't there anymore. Was doing a few new things. And then like the mid 2000s, it kind of slowed again. And then probably 2009, 2010, I think there was probably more of an upswing. And also too, I started working at a pressing plant. So I kind of got the like, hey, how do I put some stuff on the press? Like, what do I need to do? And so, like, unfortunately, there were never breaks financially, but I was able to get my stuff put in the front of the line a lot of times. So it just like working around it, I was just like, God, this is just, I gotta do this again. So then it's been a slow climb to now. And I've actually pushed off a lot of other, hobbies, business things, different things that were taking up my time to just say, hey, this needs 100% of my focus. So that's kind of where we are right now. And maybe that's that's the end of the equation of why it's doing better now.
Well, and if this is too insider baseball, and you don't want to answer, it's totally fine. I was just curious, like in the 90s, were you at any point like offered like a P&D deal? Like,
oh yeah.
You just didn't feel it was a good fit, or? Well,
I've been offered a few times. The 90s was definitely it. But I mean, I got offered one 6 months ago.
Oh,
so,
okay.
It's just and it was part of me starting a distribution company for another company. So somebody wanted me to form a distribution company, and New Age would be, in the mix with everybody else that we could make deals with. And then again, New Age would be taking the back seat to X distribution company or whatever it might be. So like I would need to not do the label to focus on doing a distribution, because I think it's really hard, especially since I don't have employees. So it's not like, oh, hey, hip, cool A&R guy that can go and do a lot of the footwork for me and do day-to-day in the office while I go and have a second job. It's just never felt right. And also, too, I've always kind of had a weird feeling about labels that did that. And I think it's just kind of a prejudice of like, dude, I had to deliver pizzas for, the first year of the label just to pay for 7 inches. And I had to do a lot of work to get to where things funded themselves. And, you could get to where, it rolled. But I think there's a lot more at stake when it's your money and your decisions that matter if there's a next release, which that doomed me in 97. Would it have doomed me if I was just doing a P&D deal? No, I would have just told the distributor, hey, sucks for you. You made a bad deal. Like I'm not invested, I'm not invested in that way. So it's just a different mind frame. And when I hear guys that I know, and maybe it's not public that they had P&D deals, they talk about the struggles of doing an independent record label and, oh man, blah, blah, blah. And I can just grit my teeth a little bit and just like, you guys don't know, like I had a distributor approach me about a year and a half ago that wanted to take over mail order and everything. And I was like, then what do I do? I don't know. Like I enjoy, at 51 years old, I enjoy putting inserts in records. Call me crazy. I just love the fact that from day one, this is things, if you're holding a record, there's a 95% chance I held it, 2 weeks to 20 years or 30 years before that. So I just have such a connection to it that I feel it's I do it or nobody does it.
Yeah. It's funny hearing your story about, what happened back in the day with the distributors. Just really gave me the cold sweats, because with my label, that's exactly what happened. It was the same thing. I was exclusively distributed by Lumberjack Mordam, and money stopped coming. And I'm like, what's going on? And they're like, oh yeah, no, that's coming, just cash flow issues. And then poof, they were gone, and they housed all of my product. So I literally don't own everything I put out.
Wow.
So it's like, you're like, bands are like, what about, the digitals? And I'm like, well, they were doing that too. And I'm like, I never saw, I don't even know I couldn't even tell you a number that you were supposed to get, because I never saw it.
Yeah. I had the same exact thing happen with Lumberjack. And there was a point where I might have been getting told more than other people, but I was told that they were closing down. And I called, there was a band on the label, I can't even remember what year, called 5 Victims, 4 Graves. And I put out their CD, and I was talking to them, and I'm like, hey, how far are you from this Lumberjack's offices? And they were like, oh, it's, we're passing through there in like a week and a half. And I called Lumberjack, and I go, hey, can you do me a favor? I've got a band coming by to pick up all my shit. And literally, they came home from tour, came to my house, and unloaded their van, which, their own CDs were in there. It was just like, oh, this is all they gave us. And of course, everything valuable was gone. And the stuff that had sold, sold medium to less was full of it. Like it was a bunch of stuff they had trouble selling, and now I needed to figure out a way to sell, and I'm sure it's still in my garage.
Good Lord.
But, yeah, I had one distributor called Dutch East India. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of them.
No.
But Dutch East. Yeah. Dutch East India. When did they folded in the early 90s, didn't they? I vaguely remember seeing ads from them in MRR, but yeah.
Yeah, they took me for about $30,000. And mid 90s, you know, a very small operation losing $30,000 was, and I used to call there. And if I said, "Hey, this is Mike from New Age," "Oh, he's at lunch," "Oh, he's at a meeting," blah 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 blah. And so I just started calling, "Hey, this is Jordan from Revelation. Can I talk to whatever the fucking guy's name was?" "Oh, sure. Hold on 1 minute." And "Hey, it's Jordan. What's going on?" And I was like, "You motherfucker." And once I knew I wasn't getting paid, I would put like as much of a ream of paper in my fax machine as I could, and I would call them and I would fax them all night till they got in at 9 a.m, just running out all their fax paper. I just was so fucking pissed at these guys, and they never paid me. And like you were saying, you get into a situation with bands where they're like, "Oh, hey, like, you know, where's some royalties?" And you're like, "Holy fuck, dude. Not only did I pay to record you and pay to manufacture you and then ship your records, another payment, and then not get paid for the records, how am I supposed to pay you?" And that was basically the end of the 90s, was just like, and there were a few other instances. And, you know, it's a very wise man once told me, "Don't give more than you're willing to lose." And I was like, whoa, well, hold on a second. Like, I'm trying to, the bands are going to these towns and these record stores need these records. And I was so ahead of myself with, "Oh, just press more records. Oh, get it to that distributor. Oh, get it to those stores. So-and-so's on tour this summer. Their tour has to be great." And I don't want them going into a store going, "Hey, how come our new LP wasn't in the biggest store in Texas? Like, why wasn't that?" So I was so moving ahead and not looking at accounting. And my strong points are, yes, I can work an 18-hour day without a problem. Can I sit and go over the books and tell the distributor, "No, I'm not sending you more product until we get payment for the last two things"? And I was just so focused, you know, in a backwards direction. As a businessman, I had no business training, you know, so like, you know, I tried to take legal action against some people. It was just like, what am I going to do? Go to New York and sue a distributor for 30 grand? Like, you know, and I knew some people in the area. I'm like, do I send a guy over? You know, like, what the fuck am I doing? I don't know what the hell to do. So we just took huge, huge losses in the 90s. And that's why, you know, that's why we don't have a lot of that catalog anymore. Because it's like, not only did I take the loss, but I wasn't even interested in rebuilding at that time.
Yeah, understandable.
Did you get the bankruptcy court papers?
From Lumberjack?
From Lumberjack or from Dutch East India? Did any of them? Did you go through that process?
No.
Oh man, because that's fun.
What happens there, Sean?
Basically, you get put in this court system. They send you a paper, and then they send you all the updates of what their assets are, and then how much they owe people, and then what percent you are of what they owe people, and then you get whatever percent. So if they owed you $30,000, but then they owed a total of $30 million. And they only have $100, like you're getting like $1, and they will mail you the $1. You get the $1, and you're just like this. They're like, consider this it, and you just get these, you know, these big thick envelopes from bankruptcy court every few weeks, and you're just like, all right, I just gotta laugh this off, you know.
Yeah, I didn't get that from either of those two, but I got something similar from my wife published a magazine for a while about roller derby, and she had pretty good distribution and was doing a lot of big stuff with it. But in the decline of, you know, physical media, people stopped buying magazines, and we had something similar where we were getting nickels and pennies and like you said, big envelopes of paperwork. And then you're like, it's just more insulting because like I could maybe forget about it, but now I'm reminded every so often that like, oh, this check that's not even worth the postage that it took to send it to me. So yeah, I feel for you. Did Lumberjack actually did do that though?
Yeah. And I was going through another label to get European distribution. And they folded at the same time. So I lost 100% of my distribution for the US and Europe in the same month. And it was like, you're just like,
oh my
God. So,
wow.
And it was at the time I was like, you know, I was doing well, but like cash flow issues, you know, you're like, because I paid the pressing plant for everything, you know, up front, 100% paid them off. And
right.
I was like, okay, well I'm due money, but I don't have money coming in right now, you know, just cash flow. So I took out a loan and then all that came about. I'm like, well, I still got to pay this loan. So I'm like working to pay off a loan for a record that I don't even own because my distributor has it all and they folded. And I'm assuming it went into a dumpster somewhere.
Oh my God. Oh, such, there should be a roundtable of just these kind of stories. Just when people think they got it bad. I mean, luckily, I think so much has been streamlined. So many of those companies have fallen by, and now there seems to be more labels than ever, but it seems like there's less distributors, and that appears to be good.
Yeah, now everything gets released on cassette again.
Yeah,
which is really fucking weird.
Oh yeah, and now bands with 200 Instagram followers are like, hey, we need to put out a record, and it's like, you might want to like build a little first, and then like I saw somebody earlier this week put out a one-song, one-sided 7-inch. And I was like, I've never seen such a thing before.
Was it a lathe cut or?
I don't remember, but it just seemed so fascinating. Like, wow, like one song, like that's, you got another side of the record. You guys didn't think of another song? I was just like, yeah, man, what? But oh well.
I think everybody wants to catalog, but sometimes, obviously, in this day and age, they definitely jump the gun. Like, I get it. I mean, first band, I was ever in, the first thing I wanted to do was record, and even though we were terrible, thankfully no one was willing to put money up to put out a record for us. But like, that was the dream, but kind of a hard turn away from this, but my bro asked me to ask you this, and actually once he brought it up, I was like, I wonder, did any copies of the pressure release 7-inch have an insert, like other than like an ad?
No.
Okay.
No. And it was, I mean, definitely it was New Age's second release, and I'd come from the Walk Proud that had a 2-sided insert that folded up and went in, and the cover came out, and Pressure Release sent me the cover art, the mix down of the record, and the label art and the back cover art. And I was like, oh hey, just let me know when you're going to send the insert. And they're like, oh, we don't want one. And they were excited about not have one. They were like, oh yeah, we don't want to have one. And I was like, like, okay, and some labels might say, no, you've got to do something. But I mean, I've always, for the most part, sided with the bands, because I mean, like, I put out my own records, and I want them to be a certain way, and I want them to exclude certain things and include certain things.
Sure.
And that's why another reflection on the 90s, when bands were like, hey, we want to go do this. And I'd be like, hey, I've got a contract, but I know I'm not pressing your record. So, like, what am I going to be? Like, just hold on to this thing because it's mine/ours, when you want to go somewhere else and do something that's still yours and with someone else? Because, I mean, something I don't think we predicted early on was, I mean, a lot of labels didn't really see the longevity of like what we were doing.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely didn't think, oh, I should, give away, so many records back in the day. Like, oh, my friend wants a Life Love Regret test posting. Oh yeah, here, dude, here's one, here's two.
Dude, you could practically put a down payment on a house with one of those now, practically.
Yeah, exactly. And a friend of mine was like, when I got the Turning Point on clear, he's like, dude, can I buy 10 of those? I'm like, I don't care. Of course, and I sold them to him at distro price, at wholesale, 10 clear, unopened fucking Turning Point LPs.
Jesus Christ.
I think, I think there's such I've got a pretty great scope, and you guys do too, of how when we got into it, how it started, what it appeared like, what it was, and the steps it kind of goes through. And now it seems like there's so many labels, and there's like a medium area of all these labels that are like all kind of fighting for the same bands, all kind of doing the same couple things. Mm-hmm. And then there's the couple above that. And then there's like, people pressing their own stuff. But pressing plants are making money like they've never seen before, I have a feeling.
It's insane. I started a new label, and I go to a pressing plant that's like 4 miles from my house. And
there's a pressing plant in Chicago?
There is. It opened like 2 years ago.
Oh wow!
And it's great. I can swing over there, and I mean, it's weird with COVID, mask up and distance, right. But it's cool. You get to go. I ran a label for like 8 years, and I never saw a record being pressed, and it's like a magical thing. And you go in there, and they're like, oh yeah, we're running 3 shifts of people pressing records, and we're still at like 16 weeks. I'm just like, oh my God.
Wow. Isn't that crazy? I remember, what's the name of the pressing plant?
Smash Plastic.
Oh, okay. I've heard of them. I remember, I'm sure you've heard of a pressing plant in California that was called Rainbow.
Yep.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I knew a friend who was managing a really large label there, label and pressing at Rainbow. And I said, oh, what's the turnaround time like? And he said 6 months. And I said, and Rainbow is a label that up until it sold off, it was running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Like it couldn't press more records, and it was 6 months behind. And that was probably 4 years ago.
Good Lord.
And I just asked him, I said, how do you survive? Like, and it's everything's on a calendar. Like, and usually when labels like our size get a release, that band's ready to support that record as soon as it can come out. It's not like, I couldn't imagine telling somebody, hey, you're going to see vinyl in 6 months, even though that's almost what happened with the Vanguard release, just because of COVID, just because of the holidays, just because of international shipping and lockdowns. But being on a routine schedule of every 6 months, it's like, God, I guess it's 4 months in a lot of places. I guess 2 more months isn't that big of a deal. Just thinking of half a year is just mind-boggling.
Do you press overseas?
I do now. I pressed 20 minutes from my house for 30 years, and I just had enough of. I became really close with everyone that worked there, and it's the same one that I worked at for 10 years-ish. And in a lot of relationships, I know you guys are aware of, like, I was so close to them when they would fuck something up, it was hard to go, whoa, I'm not paying for this, and it was hard to, and like a lot of, when the Trees and 7-inch was coming out, I was dealing with them a lot, and they were coming up with, oh, we can't mix that color. And I'm like, the order's been there for 3 months. And you're telling me now you can't mix this color? The name Custom Records is in the name of your company. And a black and white marble with some red in it it's not splitting atoms, And so there was this, and it took forever. And and just it was like 7 issues in a row with different releases, just getting the wrong color, getting the wrong number, just things that could have been like, there's so much time going on between when you turn in your release and when you get it now. To have questions the week it's going on press of how it is not going to go on press that week is unacceptable. So, and as vinyl is king and I'm putting in these 300 and 500 piece orders, I know I don't want the focus of Capitol and Warner Brothers and these huge labels that are just, you know, oh, we've got a PO for 100,000 pieces. Okay, that's going to be going on for a month and a half. You know, oh, hey, can you wedge in these 500 7-inches if you don't mind? So, long story short, I just got to a point where, and my calls weren't getting returned on, hey, I've got this issue. And so I was just like, maybe it's better to just have a pressing plant that when they fuck up, I can go, hey, I'm not paying you. Or, you know, like when they need payment, they can go, hey, fucking pay us. And like, that's maybe what I needed. And I've had no problem since that. And yes, we are pressing overseas. So freight is a killer. To get a pallet or 3 pallets of records is different than driving 20 minutes, but the communication's fantastic. The website that they have is fantastic. Like, everything about it is really cookie cutter and very easy for a guy like me that gets distracted very easily. It's been really smooth so far. Starting with the Crow Killer record and doing Life Force and Vanguard has all been at this new plant that we are really excited about.
Yeah, that was part of the reason I wanted to do something local. It's just like, you know, I have the owner's phone number. I can text him. I text him at random times. I'm like, hey, how's it going? I'm like, you know, not sweating you, just I'm curious. And he's like, oh yeah, hey, come on down, take a look. Or I can listen to the test presses on his turntable. You know, it's awesome.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing that it's fantastic when it works, and it's obviously working. I think since I had worked there, they knew they couldn't give me bullshit excuses. Oh yeah, that machine. Well, no, I know that machine. I've worked on that machine. You know, like, they couldn't tell me, oh, those colors don't mix right. I need to come over there and mix the colors? Like, you know, and I would even see when I was there working, because I never pressed records physically. I'd work on machines. I'd do 1,000 other things, but I never sat there and actually pressed records. And I should have done it at least once. But I would see a New Age job on a machine and go, oh, and then it would say, don't run during night shift, which is when I worked. So I'd be like, what? They don't want me to look and see. And I would look in the material that's getting heated up and used, and I'd see that it's the wrong color. And I'd be like, okay, I need to let them press these records and then act like I don't know anything when I go to the loading dock and open one of the boxes and pull one out and go, oh, hey, it's the wrong color. You know? And so they'd be like, oh, we'll give you a discount or whatever. Like, I want the thing we advertised. You know, is like, life exists now in a world of pre-orders. Like, I don't want a different color. I don't want to have to explain to people that the band told me they want these 2 colors, and we agreed on these 2 colors, and those 2 colors went to the distributor in a one sheet, and those 2 colors are online in our web store. Like, I don't want red when we ordered green. Like, it's just, don't fuck up. And there was so many conflicts like that where I knew too much as the client off the street, to where, you know, I probably expected too much, and maybe they thought I deserved less. I don't know, but it made for some strenuous times.
Yeah. What I was actually wondering about this. How did the New Jersey Connect happen? Like, with New Age, how did that start? I guess.
It all came about in 1990. I had driven across country with my mom, and we were driving to upstate New York because we have family up there. And so once I was in upstate New York, I was already friends with the Upfront guys. And they were like, oh, dude, we've got a show next weekend. We're playing, I want to say, in D.C., or it might have been New Jersey. I know I've seen the flyer because the flyer's literally Upfront, Lifetime, Resurrection, and Mouthpiece. So it just became, I think I got a Mouthpiece demo or the song that ended up on the New Age Words to Live by comp. But there was Upfront, new Mouthpiece, new Lifetime. So like that one trip was getting in touch with all of those bands. And I think Resurrection might not have been out quite yet, but I knew Rob from Release. And
I was going to ask that,
Yeah, that whole group of people was just, arm's length away. And so that spawned all of that in one weekend, one show.
Yeah, well, and did the turning point come from just you hearing the 7-inch, or?
The turning point came from me having the 7-inch, and the singer Mikey from Drift Again knew Skip really well.
Oh, okay.
And I just remember that I said, "Oh yeah, tell them I want to put out their LP. Yeah, tell them we're going to do that." And he called me back and goes, "Hey, he says they want to do that." And I was like, "Are you fucking kidding me?" And it was literally like said in passing, and I became friends with Skip and started talking to Skip. And God, when did I meet them? Because I met them in New Jersey and went to Skip's house and hung out. It must have been, 1990. The Turning Point record was out or coming out, depending on when I drove back east. So I think it had already come out. So I must have met them through the phone and then went out there and met them in person.
Gotcha.
Because I've got pictures hanging out with them and goofing off and doing stuff. I think we went to the mall and did some very 90s kind of shit. But yeah, all of that just became the New Jersey connection.
So the current roster of bands seems to be like, when they talk about each other, like really seem like family, like they're really excited to help each other out and promote each other. How do you foster that? How do you like build that kind of camaraderie? And is it something you look for in the bands, or is it something that you're doing to help accommodate that?
Well, I'd like to think that I like relationships to be personal, especially dealing with something that the music that we're all involved in is private and personal in a way, yet we get up on stages and open ourselves up to different things. But I think our genre of music is very personal. When it comes to writing lyrics or talking about subjects, it's not like heavy metal or country music or a lot of these things where you can just steer down corners and talk about topics that, may or may not have something to do with you. But I think as far as like politically and personally, I've looked for people with value in our scene, I think, and it's like, luckily, for the most part, it has worked out very well. There's a few instances that aren't worth going into where I felt that there could be something off, and sometimes I avoided it, and sometimes I didn't listen to myself. But there's a few relationships over the years that were like, we could have done without that. But the current roster is really fantastic. It's a lot of people who have become friends just through the label and being in bands. And, oh, hey, you guys should come up and play a few shows. Oh, hey, you guys should come down and play a few shows. And luckily, it's just happened where it happened. I mean, I probably could have focused more on local California bands and more LA or Orange County or Bay Area, but it's really not like that for me. It's like, oh, this band's good. Where are they from? that's where they're from, and we're going to support this band in that area. And we're going to try to do all they can if they want to come to the West Coast or wherever they might need help. So, yeah, I mean, I've got group text after group text with like different people and the different bands all together, and we all talk about different things at the same time. And a lot of times I'll get demos and I'll send them to, you know, everyone, and they'll be like, "Oh my God, that's my friend so-and-so's band." And it's like, I want those connections to always be there, because I think this scene is built on a lot of that. I mean, it's built on so much of friends, people, establishing relationships and fostering bands to go into states maybe they couldn't get into before because they didn't know anyone. So I think overall it is definitely something I look for. And I love seeing when bands share each other's stuff on social media, you know, like any links to whatever they're doing, if it's benefits fundraisers, if it's, hey, we got a new record, or check out this video we did, or, you know, hey, we got a story on No Echo or something. I love to see that.
Kind of speaking to that, I mean, I know that Free Will did the John Bunch memorial, but was that the point where you guys decided you were going to kind of be a band again beyond that reunion show, or? Yeah, because we got asked to do it, and luckily we all never lost touch for too long. So it wasn't like really digging somebody, you know, out of a crate in someone's backyard or something. Like, everyone was still very much in touch, you know, especially now through social media. It's easier than ever. But yeah, we just started practicing, and it was like, oh, we could probably pull this off. And it's like, well, after that, you know, we'll be all practiced up. Why don't we try to do some more stuff? So it kind of came pretty easy, and everyone in the band is very similar in age, similar in lifestyle, similar in family. And so luckily no one's too full of their own shit to, you know, like, there's no egos or attitudes or anything. And it's really like, hey, can we do this? Great, let's do this. Hey, can we practice now? You know, at this point. And we did COVID lockdown practices all the way, you know, we're still doing them. And everyone just literally goes home and lives in a cave and does whatever they have to do. And then we all meet up, and everyone's pretty careful. But yeah, it really did. The John Bunch show, though we're honoring our friend in such a terrible time, it really, I think, brought so many people together, and it brought me together with people I didn't really favor. And I remember things just kind of being okay, you know, with people I'd rather not see, you know, like, oh, hey, so what's going on? You know, like, lifts a lot of weight off your shoulders. And it was the opportunity for us to start making music again. So Free Will kind of spawned out of that again. It's awesome.
So you've been in a lot of bands over the years. What's your motivation at your life experience level to keep doing that and keep playing shows? Well,
a wise old man rocking in his rocking chair. It's technically been different things in different bands, because they've all been pretty different to me. One of the things I really liked about Dear Furious was I was the worst musician in the band, and I had to step up my game to be on those guys' level. So I looked at it as like, I really gotta pull my own weight here, you know, because Brian, the other guitar player, was in Mean Season, and he's no slouch. He writes incredible riffs. And so I practice more at home than I ever had. So that was really a motivation. And because I think the songs were really good. The guys were great. Everyone was, you know, they're pretty similar in age to where, you know, I don't think anyone was having too many issues outside of the issues all of us have at our age. But through the years, it's been different motivation. For Free Will now, it's just so easy. And we're doing stuff so quickly. I mean, we recorded we started recording a record in December, and we had 10 songs pretty much in the can, and we got an offer to do a comp, but they wanted a song exclusive. So we gave them one of the songs off the record, and then it's like, oh, hey, we kind of got 2 more songs we're kicking around. So now we're booking studio time at the end of February, start of March, to go in and do these 2 more songs, slap them on the LP, and then put the LP out. So, yeah, I'd say the motivation for Free Will now is incredibly rewarding. And also, when it comes to everything involved with a band, I think shows at my age are probably my least favorite. As you know, because like trying to book things, I mean, obviously COVID aside, but trying to get people to pay attention to a band that formed at the end of '87, had 2 good years, and then tried to put out an LP and it failed, and then, you know, take 30 years in the middle, or 25 plus. And so people kind of know the name, but it's not like we've had a consistency of doing things. So really, when it comes to trying to get shows, I'm reintroducing myself and, you know, sending out this bio that's got this 25-year hiatus in the middle of it. You know, and it's kind of like, and where do we fit now? Because like we're kind of melodic, maybe pop punk-ish, sort of. Like, but I've spent most of my years in hardcore, so it's like, well, my own band kind of doesn't fit where so many places I've been are. I need to like go out and kind of rediscover the other side of the scene. So it's really weird, and you know, we get support now and then, and it's awesome. But I mean, we hear from more people that are like, for instance, we played up in Santa Cruz 3 years ago, and the guys from Good Riddance were there. Like, dude, we haven't seen you since 1989 at Gilman. And it's like, like, holy shit, I haven't seen you since Gilman, like in 1989. It's fucking unbelievable. So, I mean, there's moments like that, but writing and recording and working on graphics and doing the social media stuff is really fun. Shows at my age are kind of like, you know, I'm not in sick of it all shape of being on stage for all those years so consistently. You know, it takes a little bit, and I wear a knee brace sometimes. And, you know, it's kind of like wondering where you fit at this point, you know, and we might come out of COVID with a record that maybe some people like, maybe they don't, but who knows about getting shows? Like for any band, not even us. It's like, is every more established band just going to be dominating everything and there's no room for the little guys? You know, it's a big mystery, but shows stress me out.
I'm just laughing. You're like, I haven't seen you guys since '89, and I'm like, hardcore math, old hardcore math. Oh man, that's 12 years.
Well, like, so I just started playing music with friends again prior to the pandemic, and then that's obviously stopped for a while. But the thing I noticed is I'm just so fucking sore, even just standing there playing my bass. Like, any sort of weird, like, unconscious exertion you do, and then your back hurts. It fucking sucks.
Only my Netflix finger is getting workout.
Oh, yeah. I feel exactly the same way. It's kind of like, okay, I've been standing for 20 minutes. I better go sit in a bar stool. Or like find something to lean against. And it's like, I still do all the screen printing for the label. So it's like, hey, I get to stand 10 hours a day as it is. Like, now I have to play music and stand some more. It's like, nah, let me sit down.
Yeah. On one end. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say it's definitely different.
Well, yeah, it's kind of a weird dual-edged sword. You know, like, to me, one of the most valuable things you can get from being involved in punk and hardcore this long is just the bonds and the friendships, and like you were saying, you ran into people at the John Bunch Memorial you hadn't seen in years that maybe in some cases you hated, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, we're old, it's cool, we're all still here. But the downside is, first of all, 20-year-old kids don't give a fuck what we're doing.
Right.
And then on the other end also, I mean, it hurts more now physically.
I mean, one of the cool things though is I've got a 6-year-old daughter, and like she loves hardcore, loves it. Sick of It All is her favorite band, and she's like, I invented this is how you dance to Sick of It All. And it's funny, it is essentially old New York hardcore dances. She's like doing the creepy crawl, and she's stage diving, and I was like, man, all those old dudes had the originality of a 6-year-old girl. And the best part is like, so just from knowing people over the years, I've been doing this a long time, I put out an Instagram message. I was like, my daughter wants her COVID birthday to be a Sick of It All themed birthday. I'm like, does anybody know Sick of It All? And Armand responded, it's like, I think we can help out. And you're just like, all right.
No way.
So everybody in Sick of It All made a birthday message for my daughter. And so,
that's awesome.
So on her birthday, I've got the iPad and I edited them together because they did them individually, edited them together. And I put like an intro in of the opening for the Step Down video. And I was like, happy birthday. And I was like, somebody wanted to give you a birthday message. So she's watching. I'm making a video of her, and just like, she's so excited she can't talk, And it's like, this is amazing. It's like indoctrinating these kids into the hardcore scene.
That is amazing. That is so amazing. I wish my daughter cared more about hardcore, but she just doesn't care. She went away to school one year, and I was like, "Oh, how's it going?" "Oh, great. They know you were in the kids that I know in school know you were in Strife," and I'm like, "What?" Of all things, they know you were in Strife, and I was like, "God, Jesus." But that's what's incredible, specifically about Sick of It All. That they would, I luckily got to tour with those guys in '95 when Strife toured with them, and they were literally, and throughout the years have just been the best people. And that doesn't just happen. The fact that they're all great people, they're still doing it. They could be doing a lot of other things, but keeping that band going and keeping everyone happy, it's really cool. And one of my favorite Sick of It All stories, and I'll tell it quick, was we were in Florida with them, and we were trying to figure out if the show had been canceled. It was raining, and there was a monsoon. It was just incredibly bad weather. And we were at the venue, and the Sick of It All guys were going to the door of this place and trying to talk to somebody and whatever. And Armand came over and said, "Oh, hey, the show's canceled, but the promoter wanted me to give you this." And I want to say it was $500. And we were like, "What? We're getting paid for not playing?" And he got this look on his face uh-oh, the jig is up. They're going to figure it out. And we were like, no, this is your money. And he was like, no, the guy, I swear. And they were giving us money for Sick of It All was giving us cash out of their own money on a show we were both missing. And it was the wildest thing that I'd seen anyone do before or after. It was just such a kind gesture that they were trying to get out of getting credit for, So, side story, but it's just one of those things.
So back when there was the Misfits Sick of It All H2O tour, but that must have been 90, whatever, 96. And my roommate and I knew the guys from H2O, and we went to, I don't know, all the Midwest shows. and there was a show in Milwaukee, and it was at this club that has multiple venues in the same building, and Bob Dylan was playing there that night. So when you go into the lobby, it's like a middle school dance. Bob Dylan fans on one side of the room, like Misfits fans on the other, and they're just staring at each other like it's awkward. And Bob Dylan refused to play and at the same time as the Misfits show. So the Misfits show was going to happen, but it was going to be delayed by hours when people were already there. And I had backstage passes through H2O, so got to go to backstage of Bob Dylan, and I didn't get to meet him or anything. But then we wandered back to the backstage of the show, and I think that was the first night that I could have met the Misfits, and I grew up like idolizing the Misfits. And I was talking with Lou, and I was like, and he's like, "Do you want to meet the guys in the Misfits?" I was like, yeah. and he's like, "Hey," he's like, "This guy wants to meet you." And like, one of them put me in a headlock, and they've got a bench. They've got like a workout, like a bench press in their dressing room. It's like their rider was like, you had to have a bench press bar and pizza. And then like a thick New Jersey accent, he's like, "Hey Lou, the kid's got good taste."
Jesus.
And I'm like, I don't know, 19. I'm just like a pig in shit.
Were you bummed that it wasn't Danzig though, or?
I didn't care. It really, it's such a fun story, that you.
Oh yeah.
As hardcore people above the age of 40, we've got these stories and we just cling to them, like it's like our medicine.
Yeah. We all got a few, yeah, for sure. Kind of, I guess, probably getting close to ending this for the night, but my friend Adit wanted me to ask you, Mike, what do you use for hair product?
Wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Well, I've been using some stuff called Axle Grease, which I've got a tiny bit left, and I've been told that they're out of business. So my next step is probably going to be some Suavecito. I heard that's really good. It's Suavetico, whatever it's called. That's probably, I would guess that's probably my next step.
Well, just be happy you're lucky enough to still have a coif.
I think about it often.
I'm about 60% bald. So.
Oh yeah.
So you probably aren't willing to say what your favorite band of new age records is, but I'm going to tell you mine, and is like there's a lot of good stuff going back to the catalog. It's funny, prepping for this interview, going through, and I was like, oh, I forgot that was new age. Like this was so good. But hands down, it's Redemption 87, and I love that band. Loved them.
Great band for sure.
Wow.
Yeah, I couldn't.
That's very. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say I couldn't pick one. There's too many good bands on the label. But
and that's another example of really good people too.
So, at this point, what is it of new stuff that you listen to? I mean, we probably all fall in the trap of listening to stuff that we've listened to for 20, 30, 40 years. What is it of the new crop of bands, not necessarily even on your label, that you listen to and you're like, man, this still excites me. This makes me feel excited about, the new era of hardcore.
Gosh. Now this I should have prepped for. Well enough versed in those things that you've had, on the shelf for decades and decades. But as far as new stuff, I mean, I definitely don't get exposed to too much unless it gets sent to me. because I try not to spend too much time clicking and scrolling. Usually the stuff I find, if I do that, is already on a label. So it's probably bad, but I kind of like, if I've got 5 minutes to do what I got to do, I've got to go do other things. But gosh, as far as like, I have my hand on my forehead right now trying to conjure a band. Oh man. Oh, I should have studied.
All right. Conversely, then, what's a band that because for younger listeners that may not know older stuff, they may only know the newer bands. What's something that you think they should check out and be like, hey, this is something from my back catalog that may be, off the beaten path a little bit that you should check out. I think, should be part of your repertoire.
Ooh, okay. That's a good question. Okay. There's like a like a carousel spinning right now, and I'm seeing I was really, really into and still listen to often the Fight Everyone releases. I really wish that band had stuck around longer and done more. But I think both of their releases, the full length more than the EP, is just phenomenal. And like guys out of that band, did Twitching Tongues and, fucking Nails and like those kind of bands. It's like, if you scroll back to Fight Everyone, that's where those guys came out of. And another example of great people. I would say that one of my all-time favorite releases, and this is probably the single release I've listened to the most, and probably the band I wanted to be in the most. And one of the CDs that was brought back from Lumberjack in some taped up boxes was a band called Countdown to Life. And are either of you familiar with Countdown to Life?
That doesn't sound familiar.
No, I don't know that band.
Okay. It's probably the must go to in the New Age back catalog for incredible guitar tones, incredible recording. It's an early Paul Miner recording. The drums sound fantastic. And those guys went on to do a band called Broadway Calls. That's kind of more of a melodic kind of pop punk band.
I know that band.
That I think, that did pretty well. Is they did a hardcore band prior to that really was like just musically performance. Like for me, it had everything in a band that I love, and just incredible energy, incredible dedication. And a band that just slipped through people's fingers. And maybe it was the label at the time, maybe it was them, maybe who knows, maybe it was me. But I would say if there's a go-to, Countdown to Life first, Fight Everyone gets second.
Govern Yourself Accordingly is the name of the record?
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
okay.
Found it on... most of it in my apartment at the time. Paul had a laptop, and we were doing like, I think we did the drums in a studio, and then we did guitar and bass and vocals in my house. So there was kind of like that connection also. But it's phenomenal recording. And they've talked about like, we're thinking about doing some shows. And I'm like, wow, it's, when shows come back, this was, a year ago, but wondering like, maybe that's when they'll strike, so.
Rich, do you have anything else that you want to ask?
Nothing I can think of right now, no.
Well, I want to really thank you for being on the show, Mike. I really appreciate it. This has been great. Is there anything you want to plug? I'm sure there's a lot of things, so feel free to plug away.
NewAgeRecords.com has all the new Age things going on. and that's got links to all the social medias and ways to listen to the new stuff and pick it up if you want to. And then Free Will is recording 2 more songs. We're going to put out our first LP in quite some time. So I'm really musically excited about that, and I'm not playing any other music now. I get thoughts of calling people, and I'm kind of spoiled in a situation with, other guys that are like, everyone's on exactly the same level in the same place, just writing, recording, being excited about it. So I think that's going to be it for a while. But we're hoping to get an LP out this summer, we hope.
Will that be on Mankind or?
No. Well, that's another question. I've actually sent it out to some other labels.
Okay.
Everyone's like, oh, just put it out on New Age. And I'm like, well, that's kind of not where New Age is now. The way this record sounds is very, very different. And I'm thinking that the avenue that New Age kind of runs in would possibly be a disservice to that record. Maybe, maybe not. But I've sent it out to some other labels, hoping that it can kind of go over there and I can really focus on the label without having to focus on the label and my band on the label. I think a lot of people love to just do their own band and do their own label. And for instance, when A18 was on Victory, and all I had to do for A18 was write and record and play shows and tour, I didn't have to worry about churning out, doing the physical part of getting the records out and dealing with all that stuff. And I kind of like the separation of it. So I'm thinking we're going to try it again. If not, it's always, I can always put it out on New Age and it can, go through the normal stages.
And it's funny, when I reached out to you about coming on the show, is I legit, when I reached out to you or I heard back from you, I literally had the mailman knocking on my door and I had the Vanguard record showing up. I was like, it was a sign, which is awesome, by the way. I love the record.
Oh, cool. Yeah, they are, a band that started during COVID and we put out a record. And that has been the highest pre-order and hyped record I want to say there's ever been. I mean, it's hard to compare to releases that were done before pre-orders and all those things existed.
Yeah.
But, we put up, I want to say, a pre-order for 700 records, and they sold in a weekend. And I was just like, this is a band that doesn't even have a promo picture. Like, they've never played a show, but just people heard one song and had to have it, and it's just insane.
Isn't it only 2 dudes at this point too, or?
No, Vanguard is 4 people, but it's 2 guys from Life and 2 other guys.
Yeah.
And I'm not even sure that and I think they recorded all their parts differently. So, it was really lockdown, COVID, how do we've got this idea for a record, what do we do? The Life Force, the Crow Killer, the Life Force, and the Vanguard has been like a steady climb to, all 3 of those releases now are doing really well for us. It's amazing because the Vanguard sold out in a weekend and I had just ordered the vinyl. So the second pressing and the first pressing actually arrived at the same time because it was literally, a week apart on the POs. So they just all showed up at the same time, and it was just like, holy shit. And, I live in a pretty small place. So when FedEx Freight came with 3 pallets, it was like, just a minute. Let me figure out how I'm going to do this.
Jesus.
So,
I can relate to that. My new label, we have our first release coming out, and I like to do everything myself. So I used to work at a print shop, a local print shop when I was in high school and college. So I reached out to them. They printed the inserts, and I've got the jackets showed up on Thursday, and I'm on a work call, and I'm this big pallet is coming, and I live in Chicago. We just got 15 inches of snow, so they had to delay delivery because there was too much snow on my street, and they couldn't make it through.
Oh,
so
God.
They show up, and there's just like this pallet of jackets that show up. My wife's just like, it's amazing. I love you. And I'm on a call, and I'm trying to put a mask on, and I'm trying to bring in these boxes, and this poor guy is just like, I hate him so much. and a weird story is, I used to work at a pasta sauce of the month club, and
Oh, wow.
and I worked in the warehouse with my best friend, and we were the only two people worked in there, and this guy was driving through, and he was trying to pick up pallets. They would get pallets for free and sell them for $1 or $2 to somebody else.
Right.
But which we saw those all the time. But this dude was like, "Oh, do you have pallets?" And his arm was all messed up. And so we went over there, and the guy, whenever he would stop talking, would start gnawing on his arm like it was The Walking Dead. Like, just there's like a big gouge out of his arm where he had eaten all the way to like the muscle. And it's just like blood everywhere. And so we called them, this happened. I was like 20. So it was like almost 25 years ago. So we still laugh about this story and call him Arm Chomper. And my daughter still thinks it's hilarious. So when the pallet came, the pallet had like red paint on the edges for visibility. And she walks in, she goes, Arm Chomper was here. And this is like steel trap memory. I told her this story 2 years ago when she was like 4, and she's like, Arm Chomper was here, because she sees a pallet with red all over it.
Jesus.
God, I had something when they showed up. I've got this really narrow driveway, and so they had to park on a access road next to my place. And so this dude has to take a pallet jack and walk it probably 100 feet, 3 pallets. And I've got like just enough room in my garage. And I'm like, I hope the homeowners association doesn't see FedEx freight being delivered, because we're definitely not supposed to be running a business out of the house. So I'm like, yeah, pallets of records. Like, it's not just a few boxes out of my truck. It's like, oh no, it's 3 pallets, But it's right. Every time they come here, they're like, what is this? And I'm like, oh, it's records. And like, vinyl records? Rip a box open. Yeah, check it out. Holy shit, that's so cool. Like, yep. See you next time.
Well, thank you so much for being on. I really appreciate it. You taking the time. And everybody, definitely go check out New Age Records. They are releasing some really cool stuff. You need to check out.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate your interest.
It was great.
Here's 2 tracks for you to check out. The first one is a new track from Free Will. It's called Letting Go. The second one is by a new age band, Vanguard, that we talked about on the show. The song is called To Suffer.
In these moments, I tend to clench my fist, and in these moments I am not inclined to accept it, to view the awful truth and seek the
cliffs, asks the blind Earl of Gloucester, "How do you see the world?" And the blind man Gloucester replies, "I see it feelingly." And shouldn't we all? Animals must be off the menu because tonight they are screaming in terror in the slaughterhouses, in crates and in cages. Vile, ignoble gulags of despair. You see, I heard the screams of my dying father as his body was ravaged by the cancer that killed him. And I realized I'd heard those screams before. In the slaughterhouse, their eyes stabbed out and their tendons slashed, on the cattle ships to the Middle East, and the dying mother wail as a harpoon explodes in her brain as she calls out to her calf. Their cries were the cries of my father. And I discovered that when we suffer as equals. And in their capacity to suffer, a dog is a pig, is a bear, is a boy.
Suffering!